Hey guys, welcome back to our first session. So this is going to be covering our topic, English word forms. Now, I already had a video explaining this subject, but it didn't have my face. So yeah, some people want to see somebody's face. I think it gives them security or something. I mean, the camera is really blurry, but either way, hopefully it helps you pay more attention than if my face was not here. So yeah, let's get started. Before we do, you might want to remember this guy's name. Remember, the character helping us this time percent is All Might. That might be in the exam. It might not, but it might also be in the exam. Yeah, try and remember that name. Now, let's get started. So first off, we have to ask ourselves, what are these? And we got a bunch of words right here, right? So a lot of times when I mention the topic, word forms, people automatically think of these words: conjunctions, prepositions, pronouns, interjections, adverbs, etc. Now, all of these are the 8 parts of speech, right? But word forms are not all parts of speech. Okay, word forms are only 4. And we're going to focus on those 4 in this presentation. Okay, so remember, if you didn't fully understand the topic in class, hopefully this is going to help you out a little bit more. I'm also going to try and keep it a little bit brief so it's not as boring and you guys can get all the full explanation without so much of the blah blah blah, right? Now, here we have the presentation. Let's start a little bit with adverbs. So adverbs, what are adverbs? And we have that adverbs are the ones that tell us how often, how, when, and where. Okay, they answer those questions. They can describe a verb, an adverb, and an adjective. Okay, and examples are loudly, always, never, late, soon, etc. So you might remember some of these from your very first steps into English. The very first common adverbs that we see are adverbs of frequency. Like, how often do you take a shower? I always take a shower in the morning, etc. So those are the most common ones, but we are going to see examples like loudly later on in the presentation. Just remember, these are the ones that describe everything, everything. All of the other word forms, even themselves, except for nouns, okay? Now let's go with nouns over here. Nouns, what are nouns? Easy. Nouns are the ones that name a person, place, thing, or ideas. So nouns are the subjects or the objects in a sentence, okay? And we got dog, cat, horse, student, anything that you can think of is a noun. Anything, if you look around your house, everything you see is a noun, okay? So yeah, these are nouns. In Spanish, just to remember or remind people the names, they were sustantivos in Spanish, okay? Now, moving on to adjectives. What are adjectives? Easy. Adjectives are the ones that describe a noun or a pronoun, okay? So if you see an object next to you or a person or whatever noun you can think of when you were looking around your room, if you actually did that, then you can see a lot of different characteristics, right? And those are adjectives: red, tall, long, short, beautiful, etc. All of these are adjectives. If I have a phone and I think my phone is nice, that is an adjective, what I think about my phone. Whatever you guys think of me, your teacher, that is also an adjective. So yeah. All right, adjectives describe nouns or pronouns. And last ones, the verbs, easiest. So the verbs are the words or the group of words that describe an action or experience. So whatever action you're talking about, doing, you did, you will do, etc. These are the verbs. We got walk, see, sing, etc. So I think that's it. Make sure you get your full notes, so copy everything that we just mentioned, but we can continue to the next part. Now, there's something important that I want to mention here. We already saw this in class. Remember, don't copy this. This is just extra information. In case somebody does feel like interested by this, like I personally get interested by like grammar things, then you might want to copy it. It's pretty cool if you were into that. If you're not, then just Pay attention, listen up, and know that you can change words from one form to another. And it's very easy, as you're going to see in a bit. So, depending on the ending of a word, it can change the meaning, right? So, we were talking in the classroom about prefixes and suffixes. So, we have prefixes being the letters that we add to the beginning of a word, and the suffixes being the words that we add at the end. In Spanish, sufijos, right? So, here we go with the endings for nouns. These are just some of the endings, and we're only gonna check some out. Okay, not all of them. We focused on ER or OR, and we were talking about like this ending means a person or thing that performs the action. So we talked about the verb enseñar, but in English, right? Like, how do you say enseñar? And everyone said teach. Enseñar, teach. So how do I say somebody that teaches? Alguien que enseña. What do I call that person? And you guys told me a teacher. Yeah. So a teacher is a person that performs the action of teaching. So we can see that if we know the endings and what they mean, the usage, we can understand what the word means. Obviously, if we know the original word, like in this case, teach. We talked about another example, which was how do we say pintar in English, right? Pintar. And we said paints, paint. What do we call somebody that paints? And you guys said painter, painter. Yeah. So again, we're checking the same ending, and it's a person that performs that action, right? We also focused on the NESS ending, this one, NESS. And we were talking about like this means the related to the quality, state, or condition. So we have the word happy, which is feliz in Spanish, happy. But what if we add NESS? Now the word becomes happiness. And happiness in Spanish is felicidad, right? It's not an adjective anymore, because happy, we can use it to describe something, to describe a noun. The happy man. But happiness is the state of happy, like of being happy, right? Happiness in general. We were talking also about sorry, we're talking also about dark. What is dark? And you guys mentioned oscuridad, dark. And what happens if we add NESS? Now it changes from dark to darkness. And we have, instead of oscuridad, instead of oscuro, we have oscuridad. Yeah, I think I got that mixed up. So dark, oscuro, which is an adjective, it describes, and darkness, oscuridad. It's a noun, a sustantivo in this case. All right, so these are some noun endings, and these are what they mean, what we use them for. Now we're going to move on to verb endings. We established that one of the most common ones were the ED. What happens when we add ED to a verb? Well, we're talking about the past simple or past participle in terms of regular verbs, right? And we mentioned FY because FY is kind of interesting. So for FY, we have a word that I did not know myself existed, but until I believe a few years back when I researched the topic, right? So we have beauty, belleza. We have beautiful. So we have noun adjective. And how can we change it into a verb? Well, if we add FY, now this means that we're making something beautiful, right? We're making something beautiful. And that word would be beautify. In the same way, we have the word liquefy, which means to make something liquid, right? Liquid. So these are just some of the endings, again, that we can add to the end of verbs, to the end of words to make them into verbs. What happens if we add ing to a verb? If we're using it as a verb, now we're talking about the present participle. Okay, remember present participle when we have the ing in a verb, and we use it for present continuous, past continuous, all the continuous. So I can say I am running, I am running. That is the verb with ing. So those are verb endings. Adjective endings, here we have some more. We mentioned the FUL one, which is the bottom one here. Again, going to the word beauty, beautify. We talked about, so how do you say something is full of beauty? Well, we say beautiful, right? That dog is really beautiful. That horse is really beautiful, etc. So we're talking about changing a word from a noun, from a verb, into an adjective in beautiful. And just by changing the ending. We also have another one, which is able, and bull. And we have capable of, and we have trainable. Something that can be trained, right? Trainable. It comes from the word train. Trainable. You guys can do this a lot. Okay, this is the adjective and their endings usage. If we go over here, we have the last one of the word forms, which is adverb endings. So for adverb endings, we only have one, and we have the ly. So if we add ly to some adjectives, they change from adjectives into adverbs, as you guys can see in these two different columns. So we have beautiful, beautifully. So one thing is for me to say the beautiful woman, and another thing would be for me to say she danced beautifully. Now I'm talking about how she danced beautifully. She did it in that manner, right? It was beautiful. So you have a lot more words here: sad, sadly; noticeable, noticeably, etc. Now, if you guys remember from what I explained in the classroom, we have 4 different forms, right? Nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. But that does not mean that all verbs have 4 forms. Some words have 3 forms, some have 2. It just depends on the word itself. If somebody's interested in these lists, you can Google word form families or word families, and you're going to get a PDF, or you should be able to get a PDF just with a bunch of different words and their different forms. And so you can study. It's always good to have a lot of vocabulary. It helps you out immensely. So yeah, feel free to do that on your own, or message me, ask me for a list, and I'll send you one. For our purposes, just for the exam, we're not going to deviate from the ones that are here. So you just have to study these. Don't worry too much about it. As long as you understand these words, you should be okay. And we did practice them in the classroom. We did some of this practice, right? So we have, I have a sharp in my butt from sitting so much. So it is going to be pain or painful, right? So for a lot of for a lot of you guys, it's really easy to tell just by listening. So you're just like, well, if I say I have a sharp painful in my butt, it doesn't make sense. But if I say I have a sharp pain, now that makes sense. You don't even have to think too much about it, and the answer is pain. But for the people who don't really understand it just by listening, then you're gonna have to analyze a little bit more in depth. So by that I mean, sharp is an adjective, right? I can't have 2 adjectives back to back without them actually describing a noun, and we have in right next to it, so that's not a noun. I need a noun forcibly so it can be described by sharp. So I have a sharp pain. So for a lot of people, it's just like checking the mechanics of word forms, or the sentences in general. Do I need something in particular? And for those people who also have like a hard time understanding, how can people just tell by listening? We mentioned the example in Spanish. It's like if I say, tengo un doloroso agudo en mi trasero de estar sentado tanto tiempo. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? Doloroso agudo. It's like, what? It doesn't make sense. But if I say, tengo un dolor agudo, that makes sense. That works. That's perfect. But doloroso does not make sense. So it just depends. For a lot of people, just by listening, they know. For some people, they might not know. And we had some more examples here. We had like this one. My students felt at home, so they attended my class. Boring or bored? We clarified the meaning between boring and bored. So you felt bored. B would be the answer. And this is because of the meanings that they give off. It was kind of funny when we translated them to Spanish, and you were like, what does boring mean? It means aburrido. What does bored mean? Aburrido. So like, yes, exactly. But one causes boredom, and the other one is something that feels boredom. Either you cause it or you feel it, right? So you can say the class is boring because it's causing you to feel bored, but you can't say the class is bored, because the class, it's a thing, it cannot feel anything, right? So you can't say the class is bored. But yeah, be careful with these two. We have some examples kind of like this in the exam. We have them here in the activity also at the end, so we're gonna see them in a moment. And we have these, like, let's go to number 6 in this case. We did the top one, so let's do a bottom one. It says blank can harm a close friendship. Do we want to say jealous or jealousy? Well, we first have to analyze what each one is. So jealous, which word form is it? If you guys said it is an adjective, you are correct. Jealous is an adjective. And then B is a noun, jealousy. So can we start just with an adjective and no noun? No, we can't. I mean, can is not a noun. We need a subject here. So we need a noun. We 100% need a noun. It has to be jealousy can harm a close friendship. And again, if it doesn't make too much sense for you in English, you can try translating to Spanish. Most of the time it's gonna work, most of the time. Probably not always 100%, because some things do vary, but for the most part, you should be able to get it, since word forms, I mean, they are the same. We do have most of them in Spanish like in English, most of them, but yeah. Then this was the last thing we did. This was our final activity here, just to practice. Remember, the exam is very close to this. Only the words here in this activity are going to be in the exam, okay? It's not going to be exactly the same, obviously. I am changing word forms and sentences, but again, only practice these. You should be good in the exam if you do. Now, if you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, leave me a message. You can also contact me to my email, ask me in class. I'm 100% there. Please just don't have any questions that you're not trying to actively resolve. Like, if you do have questions, ask me, ask a classmate, ask somebody, but make sure that you're asking and you don't have that question for the exam, for the project, or even for the quiz, because we want to do good in all three. All right, so that's gonna be everything on my part. I hope you guys understood a little bit more from the topic. Again, if you do have any questions, let me know. But I will see you guys. Take care. Hopefully this video is a lot better than the other one. I'm not gonna take the other one down in case you want to check the other presentation. Either way, it is a different presentation. That's the only way. That's the only reason why I updated the video itself. But see you. Take care. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in class. Peace.